Unit 1. Myself, Jamil Pandya, Assistant Professor in Chemical Engineering Department of LJIET Institute of Engineering and Technology. In this video lecture, we start with previous chapter, which is the heat effect. So in this lecture, we talk about the standard state, then we talk about the standard heat of reaction and discuss difference between heat of reaction and activation energy. Then we talk about the standard heat of formation and discuss standard heat of combustion. So let's start with standard heat of formation. The enthalpy change associated with the formation of a gram molecule of substance from its constituent element is called heat of formation. To understand this, let's take one example. When 1 gram of HCl is produced from hydrogen and chlorine, 92.36 kilojoules per mole of heat are released. Hence, the heat of formation for HCl is 92.36 kilojoules per mole. Now let's take one more example. When nitrogen is react with hydrogen and produce 1 mole of ammonia or NH3 is released minus 46.22 kilojoules per mole energy, which means heat of formation for ammonia or NH3 that can be given by minus 46.22. When nitrogen is react with oxygen, is formed 1 mole of nitrogen oxide and it absorbs 90.43 kilojoules of energy, which means formation or heat of formation of nitrogen oxide that can be given by 90.43 kilojoules per mole. Now let's take one more example. When carbon is react with hydrogen and make C2H2, heat absorbed which is 226.88 kilojoules per mole. You can say that heat of formation for C2H2 is 226.88 kilojoules per mole. When the heat of formation is negative or negative value, which means exothermic reaction, which means heat is released. When value of heat of formation is positive, which means endothermic reaction and heat is absorbed during the formation. Heat of formation that can be denoted by delta HF. Now let's talk about the standard heat of formation. The standard enthalpy of formation or standard heat of formation of a compound is the change of enthalpy during the formation of 1 mole of substance from its constituent element, with all substance in their standard state is denoted by delta HF naught. So what is meaning of standard state? In thermodynamics, the standard state of material is the reference point used to calculate its property under different conditions. The definition of standard state condition specifies 1 atmospheric pressure and 1 mole concentration for the solution. Temperature is not specified in standard state, although most table in thermodynamics compile at 25 degrees Celsius, which means 298 Kelvin temperature. The definition of standard state temperature and pressure is different than standard state. So both are different. Standard state condition and standard state temperature and pressure both are different. Until 1982, STP was defined as a 273.15 Kelvin, which means 0 degrees Celsius and 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and absolute pressure is exactly 1 atmospheric, which means 101.325 kilopascal. Since 1982, STP is defined as 0 degrees Celsius, which means 273.15 Kelvin and 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and absolute pressure exactly 10 raised to 5 pascal. Can say that 100 kilopascal or 1 bar. So this is the basic difference between standard state and standard temperature and pressure. Standard state gives us a reference point to calculate various calculations related thermodynamics, where standard state and standard temperature is 0 degrees Celsius and 1 bar pressure. So what is difference between standard heat of formation and heat of formation? Standard heat of formation occurs at standard state, where heat of formation is occurs at normal temperature or pressure or other temperature or pressure. So this is the basic difference between standard heat of formation and heat of formation. So this is all about the heat of formation or standard heat of formation. So now let's talk about the heat of reaction. The heat of reaction is the energy that is released or absorbed when chemicals are transformed in chemical reaction. It describes the change of energy or change in enthalpy of reaction and product after reaction. To understand this, let's consider this figure. For endothermic reaction, energy of reactant is less than energy of product. To start the reaction, some energy is required. That energy is known as the activation energy. Activation energy is the energy that must be provided to the compound to result in chemical reaction. The activation energy of reaction is measured in joule per mole or kilojoule per mole or calorie per mole. So this is the activation energy. So what is difference between activation energy and heat of reaction? Activation energy is the energy that required to start a reaction. You can see here this energy is required to start reaction. And what is meaning of heat of reaction? Heat of reaction between energy difference between product and reaction. So that can be given by this line. Heat of reaction that can be given by this line, and activation energy that can be given by this line. So activation energy is the energy required to start any reaction, and heat of reaction is the difference of enthalpy between product and reaction. So both are different terms, activation energy and heat of reaction. Now let's talk about for exothermic reaction. In exothermic reaction, energy of reactant is high than energy of product. So need some activation energy to start the reaction, and heat of reaction that can be given by energy of product minus energy of reaction. So this is the heat of reaction, and this is the activation energy for the reaction. Now let's talk about standard heat of reaction. The standard heat of reaction is the enthalpy change that occurs in system when matter is transformed by given chemical reaction, when all reactions and products are in standard state. Standard state, which means 25 degrees Celsius temperature normally and 1 atmospheric pressure. So this is all about heat of reaction. So let's talk about heat of combustion. The heat change during the complete combustion of gram molecule of the substance at given temperature under normal pressure is called heat of combustion. Now let's talk about standard heat of combustion. The standard heat of combustion is defined as the enthalpy change of a substance undergoes the combustion process at standard reference state of 25 degrees Celsius and 1 atmospheric pressure. This is always expressed for mole of the substance burned or oxidized. To understand this, let's take one example. For example, the enthalpy change of combustion of ethanol minus 1360.8 kilojoules per mole, the amount of heat produced when the 1 mole of ethanol undergo complete combustion at 25 degrees Celsius and 1 atmospheric pressure, and yield product also at 25 degrees Celsius and 1 atmospheric pressure. Reaction for this: C2H5OH plus CO2 give 2CO2 plus 3H2O, and enthalpy change of for this combustion reaction that can be given by minus 1366.8 kilojoules. So this is all about heat of combustion. So in this lecture, talk about heat of formation. Heat of formation, which means enthalpy change associated with or to form 1 gram mole substance from its own constituent. This is called heat of formation. Then talk about standard heat of formation. When heat of formation occurs at standard conditions, it's known as the standard heat of formation. Then talk about the difference between standard state and standard temperature pressure. Then talk about the heat of reaction. The heat of reaction is the energy that is released or absorbed when the chemicals are formation in chemical reaction. It describes the change of energy or change in enthalpy of reactant and product after completion of reaction. Then also talk about difference between activation energy and heat of reaction. Activation energy, which is the energy to require start any reaction, where heat of reaction, which means change in energy or change in enthalpy during the reaction from product and reaction. Then also talk about the standard heat of reaction. When heat reaction occurs at standard state, is known as the standard heat of reaction. Then talk about the standard heat of combustion. Then talk about the standard heat of combustion. Heat of combustion, which means the heat change during the complete combustion of 1 gram substance at normal temperature and pressure is known as the heat of combustion. When same heat occurs at standard state, then it's called standard heat of combustion. So this is all about this lecture. I am completing my lecture here. Thank you.